Monsieur Senator Pat.
I keep wondering at this committee on these bills if I'm ever going to have a day when I'm not completely surprised by something that I hear from the witnesses, and I've just heard something else. I mean, the fact that with edibles, the impairment rate would rise over time is, there's lots of problems here. Mr. Wood, I would like to ask you this. I can't remember which of you, but one of you responded in response to my colleague, Senator Boisvenu, that the limit, it was Mr. Kay, I believe, the limit of 2 to 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood will be difficult to prosecute in court. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that and the science behind that particular.
Well, to the extent that the defense would challenge the meaning of the presence of 2 to 5 nanograms, saying that specifically by itself does not indicate impairment. In fact, they could say that my client smoked cannabis a month ago. There's data from the National Institute of Drug Abuse in the U.S. where they kept people on a unit. These were chronic users, and they kept them there for a month, and they were still finding pretty high levels of cannabis or THC when they were testing these folks. So I think that could be a challenge, and I think the only way to survive that challenge is to have great findings from the DRE, well documented, and the observations of the law enforcement officer who did the arrest about what they observed in the person's driving. That without that, I think you'd have a hard time. But again, I think looking at the experience of the courts, the prior question, I think is really important, and I can think of a document that I'd be happy to share with the committee that was across the United States looking at how they set these limits and perhaps has some of the court's experience, and I'd be happy to share that with the committee as well.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
To the clerk of the committee, Mr. Kay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go on.
Would appreciate that. That's all great. Thank you very much for coming. Very helpful.